Well, hello, White Sox fans, and welcome to another edition of the FutureSox podcast. My name is Ian Eskridge. Joining me this evening is James Fox. How are you, James?
Hey, good sir. Good to be doing this again.
Yes, indeed. So, spring training has started, and I wanted to break into this entire stream here tonight and talk to you about how much you detest spring training. And yeah, let's just start with that.
Yeah, I think I'm already there. No, so yesterday, I was at my in-laws for a dinner, and I was actually kind of excited. I watched the rest of it because those are the guys that we kind of want to see. I'm good with that. Get Lenny Sosa his reps at third. You see an Edgar Caro appearance. Like some of these guys that we're gonna talk about. The things that I don't have time for is just when random relievers are starting and people are mad that the Sox are getting beat, like that sort of thing. I just I can't do it.
You know, one thing I did find interesting, and I saw somebody else questioning this as well on Twitter, is he was not getting anybody out, and like he was still out there at 41 pitch. He didn't get the final out
Yeah,
until 41 pitches into his outing, and it's the first game of spring training. That was ugly.
yeah. He threw Chavez threw 40 some pitches. And
It's 41.
I
Yep.
didn't pay attention close enough to see what he was throwing. Like, is he working on two pitches or not? I mean, he's 40. I'm pretty sure Jesse Chavez could have a 9 ERA in the spring and he probably makes the team. So I don't know. That's the other thing. The competition element I've always kind of struggled with, right? We had this conversation with Oscar Colas last year. Like, how are you going to know he's ready? Like, can you win a job in spring training, right? I don't know. Like if Lenny Sosa looks really good in the spring and Mendick looks really bad, is Lenny Sosa going to make the team? I don't know. I've never really understood spring training battles because I think these guys kind of predetermine a lot of these spots. But maybe on this year's team, it's a little bit different. Like when you're bad, maybe you should let people, like Colson Montgomery is not making the team, right? But could Nick Nastrini? Maybe. I don't know, So there's just these different arguments.
Yeah, no, that's a. I think I'm feeling the same way about that. Is that especially this year? I feel like the possibility for these, you know, battles to actually matter and be something and actually change what's going to be on the 26-man roster for the season. I mean, case in point, today, this is one thing that I really wanted to get into after watching yesterday's game and then listening to today's game. And, I was kind of live tweeting what was going on in the game for, because it wasn't broadcast today, it was only on radio. And there were some defensive things that went really haywire over the last 2 days. And it's everybody was pleasantly surprised during the first game. Everybody was tweeting, "Oh yeah, a clean defensive game. This is amazing." That one game has been the one game where there was clean defense. The second game, I'll go ahead and bring that up right now, just off on the side over here. Braden Shoemake, who we traded, who we got in the Aaron Bummer trade here, makes an error and then makes a mental error throwing behind the lead base runner, causing a run. I mean, there have been so many, just defensive gaffes in the last two games that what I'm trying to figure out, that was like the thing that was supposed to be like the hallmark of this team is that it was supposed to be good defensively. This is what we're watching. Just the ball being thrown all over the play like a place like Little League.
Yeah, and Fletcher had a miscue in the outfield.
He
Lenyn
did.
Sosa had a bad throw at third. So I was curious to see Lenyn Sosa playing as much third base as he is. I don't know if that's like the Charlotte plan or what, or just he needs to be able to play everywhere type of thing to have any chance. But I mean, you got Shoemake on the team who's a better middle infield defender than him, right? You got Rodriguez, who I don't know could play third. I'm not sure if he could, So if you figure you're gonna send Brian Ramos back to double, maybe Lenyn Sosa's the third baseman for the Knights. I don't know. It might be nothing, but that's what he's played so far.
Yeah. Yeah. There was also there was a the defensive leaders that have been brought into the team to help and establish the culture. Martin Maldonado gets, I'm going to hold off on that one because I know you specifically want to talk about that. So I'll hold off on that. But today, defensively, he throws, there's a guy at third base. He throws to second base to get a trailing stolen base. The guy's stealing second base to take that middle base out, eliminate the double play. Fine. DeJong catches the ball, tags the guy, thinks that he got him out, didn't get him out, but there's still the guy on third base. The umpire calls him safe. Instead of paying attention to the third base runner, your defensive leadership guy starts arguing with the umpire and the run scores. It's just, like all these things that are happening defensively that, that was supposed to be a thing of the past. And this year so far, 2 out of 3 games have had major defensive miscues.
So,
So,
are they trying to play too fast? Is that what it is? That's the whole.
yeah,
Ian,
I
have
don't
you? I know, like you've met and coaches and stuff. Coaches and people. Have you ever met an acronym guy that's like been really good?
I mean, I've met some football coaches that have had some acronyms, but the only one that I've known that's been good was a coach for like 20 some years before that, and that acronym had been around for quite a while. So it was kind of one of those things where he was just good and came up with one. This isn't one that had a, you know, terrible season the year before and then all of a sudden comes up with this, bombshell that, hey, we're going to start playing fast, and then comes up. I don't even know what they all stand for. I didn't bother
Yeah, it's
remembering it, but
baseball Boylan. That's what he is. He's baseball boy. And here's the thing. Like, I don't hate like the rest of his staff. Like I think like the Grady Sizemore thing is fine, and I know that like
Major
that.
League Baseball coach
Yeah,
Grady Sizemore.
he's a major league coach. Um, and what the catcher, like the catcher coach was a is Butera, right? Like he's highly
Yep,
regarded.
Sal Butera. Yep.
People think he's gonna manage, and like it's just I'd like it better without Pedro around, but we'll see. So
Yeah, and then you add on top of all of this that the White Sox were getting no hit until the top of the ninth today. You had 2 strikeout effort from Andrew Vaughn today, 0 for 3. I think he's got like 6 strikeouts or 5 strikeouts so far in 3 games. Yeah, it's just not been it's not been a positive thing, and when you think
yeah,
about the over under on the team, it's starting to, granted, we're only 3 games in. So, you don't want to hit the panic button necessarily, but at this point, I kind of don't think it's the panic button, it's the reality button. Like
yeah. No,
the whole
they're
thought that you can dream on something is kind of lost at this point.
right. They're not good. Like they're not going to be good. I mean, this is like you want to go out and see Luis Robert, right? I think you want to salvage something out of Yohan Moncada and Eloy Jimenez and some of these other guys, right? But those guys aren't going to be on the 2026 team, right? So like people, like a lot of people aren't going to want to hear it, but like one of the best case outcomes for this team is guys playing good enough to trade them for something that you can use. And I just kind of think it's, in addition to like we find some parts that are going to be useful, right? Like hopefully Colson Montgomery is a star. Hopefully Brian Ramos is a big leaguer, right? Like we don't want to go too far. And then hopefully they find some number 3 and 4 starters, like out of some of these young guys, right? If you're happy with, if Jake Eater and Nick Nastrini are in the 2025 rotation and Brian Ramos and Colson Montgomery are on the team with Luis Robert and, you got to like spend around it, that's like not a terrible outcome. But yeah, like the games are not going to be great. So, I just feel like they're going to lose. They're going to lose differently because I do think the defense will be better, right?
Yeah.
It's been bad, but it'll be better. Um, I just like don't know where the offense is going to come from. Like I don't know.
That has been my question as well. And another thing, another thought that I had this afternoon was that, the whole point, that Chris gets brought up about making the defense better. was that it was going to help them lure free agent pitching. But then I thought to myself, the White Sox have never spent on free agent pitching or extending a pitcher if it's anything over 3 years. So what like really what are we even talking about here? What's the point?
Yeah.
It's just kind of deflecting blame here at this point to
Yeah,
what actual is going to happen.
and it's what he said, right? Like, and I think like Eric Fetty is like a kind of a shrewd, like cool signing. Like maybe like he could maybe be like Merrill Kelly or something, like on the high end. That would be great, right? But I just think that was mostly nonsense. I think he knew that he had no money, um, and he thought the cheapest way to maybe be not the worst team in the league was to fix the defense. He was stuck
Yeah.
keeping Yohan Moncada. He's stuck with Eloy Jimenez. Like you've clearly like they went into the offseason trying to trade Eloy, and we've seen how little value he has. And I don't know if it's Tim Anderson value. I don't know if it's that bad, but you know, I know we weren't like anticipating talking about that, but I mean, how many people did you talk to that wanted to like I talked to a lot of people that thought that they should pick up Tim's option to like try to trade him. Like it's worth $5 million, man. Like he waited the entire offseason and got $5 million. I mean, it kind of seems like they made the right call there. I mean, it's unfortunate because like look, I hate losing guys for nothing. Like I'm that
Yep.
guy. I hate that, right? And they probably screwed up a little bit there, but I mean, yeah, like my goodness, like and you still got free agents out there right now that like aren't making like you could look at you thought Paul DeYoung was like a nothing signing for 1.75 or whatever he got. Gio Urshela just got less than that. Like,
Yep.
and
And
I'm not even
he's been more
yeah,
productive for
and I'm not even
years.
saying that you should necessarily wait and like sign Urshela instead. I just like this market like completely cratered.
Yeah. And you see everybody talking about how Boris might have screwed his clients at this point. Um, yeah, it's odd. And I guess we could go into. Do you want to go into Bellinger now, or do you want to wait?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I just like I've been saying this and look, not that like I'm the gospel on this or anything, but I just like I saw these guys and kind of worried a little bit. You and I talked about it a little bit off air. I think we might have even talked about it a little bit before like this partnership. It's just like it's kind of a Boris problem, but not really, right? Like nobody's going to be saying this next year when his clients are Juan Soto and Corbin Burns
Yeah.
and they're signed in like early December, right? It's because of who the clients are and they have qualifying offers attached, and your big market teams other than the Dodgers haven't really spent, right? I mean, I saw today like this stuff on Blake Snell, and obviously we're not going to get into Cease a ton, but again, like in a Nightingale notes column today, like talking about how the Yankees would prefer to trade for Dylan Cease than sign Blake Snell, but they won't give up Spencer Jones, and that's what the Sox are insisting on. So, like,
Yeah.
is that leverage for the Sox or is it leverage for the Yankees? My thought is like that's kind of pushing Boris a little bit for the Yankees, but like if you're them, you're giving up a second, a fifth, and $1 million in international space for the right to sign Blake Snell. Like, and I know some people are like, "Oh, that's nothing." Okay, but it also weighs down. And I talk about this all the time, right? If you think Blake Snell's worth 7 years and 200, he's not worth 7 and 200 plus the second rounder, the fifth rounder, and the $1 million in international space. So
Yeah.
then that's why you can't agree on a deal. Like the Cubs today, like that was the perfect deal probably for them, but nobody else would have given Cody Bellinger that deal because you're not going to have him opt out after 1 year and give up a pick to do it. So, it's just, I think it's market forces a little bit, but it's also like these guys aren't that good. Like Matt Chapman had what he had an OPS under 8, and he's probably
Yeah.
gonna. I think he's perfect in San Francisco with Bob Melvin, but it's not gonna be for as much money as people thought originally. So, and then yeah, you can obviously if you have thoughts, go ahead. But then there's like a couple of draft pick ramification things that I just want to touch on too before we're moving on.
Yeah, when it came to the Bellinger signing, like the only team that it really makes sense for is the Cubs because of the compensation that you have to give to sign him. And I told my friends that are Cubs fans who were celebrating that he got signed, I was like, okay, it's cool that you're celebrating it. I understand why you are, but the thing that you have to do now that you've given him, you got the opt out, so that's great. But the problem is that they're his opt outs. So you have to just hope and pray that the results were not the anomaly and that the batted ball data from this past season is the anomaly and that he's actually going to continue to put out numbers like that to justify paying him like you are. So that's my only thoughts on the Bellinger thing.
Well, and for me, like I look as White Sox fans, like I understand like people thinking guys are terrible after small sample sizes. Like I get it. I think PCA is a stud. Like
Yeah.
I think he's going to be like one of the star athletes in Chicago. Like 5 years from now, PCA will be the Cubs center fielder, and everybody will love him. You know.
Yeah.
And
He
yeah,
had
he's
like what,
21, and he
21 at bats?
yeah, I thought it was 19, but yeah, sure.
Whatever.
Like
Yeah.
yeah, maybe it's 21 plate appearances. I mean, we know nothing. Like he totally changed the swing. He's a top 40 prospect in baseball. Like that dude's gonna be a stud.
Number one defensively.
Yeah, he's like
So,
even if like his floor is like a kind of like Kevin Kiermaier, like that great, you know. So like I think Cody Bellinger is gonna be playing a lot of first base.
yep.
I think best case scenario for Cubs fans is like PCA is really good. Bellinger has a really good year and they go to the playoffs or whatever, and then Bellinger opts out at the end of the year. I think you want this to be a 1 year deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think so. Especially because, I mean, not that I think that he's amazing, but you have Matt Mervis who has done some things, and yeah, his first taste in the majors wasn't great, but then you also have Morel, and you've got a bunch of guys coming up from the. I mean, they got like what, a top four system, so there are other guys on the horizon, and also you just saw that Brennan Davis is back now. And he's starting to. If that guy gets hot, he was their top prospect a few years ago, and I could easily see him returning back to where he was, and then they could have a ridiculous outfield of uh, PCA and then Canario and Brennan Davis, and all three of them could be top of the list in NL production.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well,
We'll see.
They have Alcantara too.
Oh yeah, and Alcantara as well. Yeah,
Yeah. And I know we weren't really gonna do this either, and people love Cubs Sox trades, Ian.
of
Like, are
course
you
they do.
surprised that we haven't really heard that match? Like, because like it seems like they have like what the Sox want maybe for Cease, like if they wanted to add Cease, and it kind of seems like the Cubs do need one more starter, and they don't want to pony up for like a
Yes,
Montgomery or
they
something. I
do.
don't know. Like it just kind of seems like that's a deal that could work in some fashion. We're not going to get into the names, but like they have a really good system. So
Yeah,
you
I
know,
wouldn't be surprised to see them try and swing a deal. And like maybe Casey or Triantos or something like
right? Like
that, and
they
a
have
couple other
excess
guys.
parts that. Like they're not going to play 7 outfielders. Like that's not.
Yeah,
I mean, even like if you wanted to take a chance on Mervis, like as one of your pieces, it's I don't know. So, like the White Sox obviously got the 69th pick in the draft a couple of weeks ago. We talked about this. Bellinger does not affect that going back to the Cubs. The Cubs will not get a pick. They don't forfeit a pick. But Blake Snell and Chapman both have qualifying offers. So, for example, if Blake Snell signs with the Angels, Chapman signs with the Giants, um, those teams lose their second rounders. Sox compensation pick moves up 2 spots, so it could end up at like 67. That's really the only thing, but that's the reason why we don't have draft bonus pools right now. Like I can kind of figure it out based off last year and some sort of increase, but we don't know the pick values because we don't know the picks yet because there's still a couple of them in question.
I mean, I'm just saying, it's going to be an interesting feeling to see how the other side lives this year with the comp pick. I'm so not used to the White Sox getting a comp pick because they trade guys before their contracts are done, so they don't allow free agents to walk, and or the guy doesn't sign for anything, and because even though they cry poor quite often, they don't qualify for revenue sharing, thus don't get the comp picks. So it's going to
Yeah.
be interesting to see how that feels to get a second
Yeah.
pick up that high.
Well, we'll be coming away with 3 guys on night 1. I feel like it hasn't happened since 2016 they had one where they drafted Burdick.
Yeah.
And then they took
Yep.
Alec Hansen in the second round. So you had 3. So yeah, so you'll have 3 players, and we'll obviously talk a lot about this. And um, picking 5, I feel like lately in these drafts, like everybody's under slot up there just because of how much the bonus pools are. Like they're like those amounts are so much money. So yeah, so we'll see. I mean, it'll be pretty informative. Like I feel like at 5, we'll kind of know, hey, like I bet they like take a shot on a guy here, like with one of these next two. So yeah, that'll be interesting. I always love having extra picks. I wish they could get another one.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah, that would be fantastic. Speaking of that 2016 draft, I'm just saying when I watch Spencer Jones hit for the Yankees, and I've made this comparison out in the ether a few times, that guy reminds me so much of Zach Collins, so much. His swing looks pretty close to Zach Collins, and they've got the same approach at the plate, which results in a lot of strikeouts
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately disappointment.
That's why I don't really understand like I don't know if it's true that the White Sox would insist on Spencer Jones in a cease trade because like I think the Yankees have enough without him personally. Like you can make a bunch of different packages with them that I like. And look, I have more risk tolerance than most and maybe more than they do even. But I mean like Roderick Arias is the type of guy where, like you get him now
Mm-hmm.
because like in July, if the Yankees want Dylan Cease, I think there's a chance he's a top 50 prospect in baseball, and then he's off the table too. I don't think I think people get a little starry eyed, and you look at the Orioles, and it's like you got to get like this guy that's the 22nd prospect in baseball. Like, no, I want like a few guys that are gonna be top 100 guys, like within the next 6 months. Like that's what you should be doing. And I think the Yankees system, as scary as it is to deal with them, because those guys are overhyped. Like I get it.
Always.
I get it. But there are some guys in that system. You just got to get the right ones.
Yeah, that was my kind of worry is that the guys that I had looked at was George Lombard and some of their pitching prospects that are a little bit closer. Those are the kind of guys that I was looking at that I liked, and I do like Juan Corella that we got from them before. I think that he has some more stuff to go. He's got some more potential to hit at some point here because he's so young. I just wonder if he will ultimately, but then again, that's what happens with them. Um, oh, there we go. Sleepy Harold says more up the middle talent, please, and thank you. I agree. I'm all for that.
We'll get more Braden Shoemakes and you'll like it.
uh, um, speaking of middle up the middle talent, TJ Montgomery said some things online on the X/Twitter the last couple of days. I know that's something that you wanted to bring up. You want to inform people of what we're speaking of?
For what, the Maldonado thing?
No,
Is that
no,
what you're
no.
talking
The
about?
Colson Montgomery thing.
Oh yes, exactly. Sorry, yes. So like we just had it was just like a reply, right? Like from his dad. Like and his dad kind of said like
Yeah.
what he's listed at. He said that Colson's 6'5", 230. Um, which I guess like he looks like a big strapping young lad, but
Mm-hmm.
I guess I didn't realize like it was 230. The 6'5", I believe. So I don't know if he's gonna get much bigger, but
I
I mean,
mean, what
that's
it's going to be like, next to Noah Schultz. I mean, let's
yeah. I
hope
mean,
he doesn't get much
that's why
bigger.
they're talking about the third base like move. It's like Troy Gloss size. It's like gonna be massive. But no, I just thought it was interesting that he just like pointed out how wrong that was. That's just like basically what he was pre-draft. They're still using like
Yeah.
6'3", 205. Is that what it said? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
It was a
no,
response to what
no
MLB
shot.
Pipeline.
Like, yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's. I mean, the fact that he's 6'5", that's a big dude.
And he looked at like look, he played on what Saturday and he looks the part. I mean, that, then you can kind of imagine like 3-4 years from now when he's in the middle of your order filled out. Like, I know the Corey Seager comps, like we've joked on this show, like comparing guys to stars, right? It's kind of stupid, but I mean, he kind of looks like Corey Seager.
Yeah, and he came in late in later in today's game, and I think he went 0 for 2. But from what the radio broadcast was saying is that there were some real bad calls by Eddings during his at bat, and Colson kind of made some expressions,
Mhm.
and the umpire said, "Oh, you don't like that? Well, here's more of it."
Yeah.
And the ball was even farther out and
Yeah.
still got called a strike. So,
Well,
welcome to
so
the bigs, kid.
for the purposes of like what we do here, I know some people like have probably just seen Brian Ramos for the very first time. Is it surprising to you at all how good he looked?
No, not at all.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, the bat has been a little less than stellar. But one thing that I did find interesting is that they had, I thought he had broken up the no hitter because he hit a laser to third base and it went off the third baseman's glove. And this was during the no hit bid. And they ended up giving the third baseman an E5. And then it got changed after the game to a hit. So he actually did break up the no hitter. Um, but like the bats looked a little rusty, as has everybody in that clubhouse has looked pretty rusty so far, other than Tim Elko. And
yeah. Yeah. Jeez. He just like hits everything like hard.
yeah, like that's the thing about Tim Elko, and like I've been high on him. I didn't put him in my top 30, but that the reason why I didn't do that is just because he's a little bit older, and there is some really high risk for him not being able to continue doing what he does as he goes up. But I attributed last season's double A swoon to the fact that he had already played, like when he got to Birmingham, he was already probably like 20, 30 games more than he's ever played in his entire life in a season. So I kind of figured that he was gassed, so it didn't surprise me that the numbers went down. Also, I've heard him in interviews say that his modus operandi for playing baseball is putting a hurt on the ball and doing damage. And so it didn't surprise me that he didn't walk a whole lot. But yeah, he's looked pretty decent. And he's looked good at first as well. So that's
Yeah.
good to see.
Yeah, and there's just the hardest part for him is there's just no margin for error at all because like and we're seeing it with Vaughn right now, right? Like we were all very excited about Vaughn and Wolf Larson, mentioned over here and he's not sure now and like look, I mean, the Keith Laws of the world and guys who I really trust like thought Vaughn was like a can't miss hitter, right?
Yeah.
And he just has not done the job. He doesn't get on base, he doesn't have enough power. And I don't know how long he's going to be guaranteed a job. So, but I mean, that's like the perfect example of like if you play first, dude, you got to mash, or else like you're done. Like there's just no. And first basemen are easy to find. You can go out and sign one every offseason if you want to. You can just go like CJ Cron is available. I think like,
Yeah.
I mean, even right now, like, you can just like go find a guy.
Yeah, I mean Reese Hoskins was available, for like for what looked to me like a reasonable contract. Granted he missed last year, most of last year, but there's always somebody that's halfway decent out there for first base.
Yeah. So before we move on, there was something that happened today that I found humorous. So I'll just equate this back to something, and it's not going to make sense for like a second. So just bear with me. But so I coached freshman football like a long time ago, right? And there was a kid that we were like afraid to put on the field. He played safety. It was just it was tough because we were afraid he was going to get hurt. He just like shouldn't have been playing. And then we had like a parent complaint, and we played him. Well, in a freshman B game, this kid got an interception because like the ball basically like stuck in his helmet and he like stuck his hand on it, right? So then, like then the kid's parents thought he was good and we were wrong or whatever,
All
right?
pro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that's how Pedro Grifol felt today when Oscar Colas broke up the no-hitter?
Mm, no.
No.
No, absolutely not. Because I think that I think that probably after he made that, after he broke up the no, when he came back in the clubhouse, I'm sure Pedro yelled at him for something, buried him.
He
I don't.
yelled when Martin Maldonado didn't hustle to first. He yelled at Oscar Colas for it.
Probably. Exactly. Speaking of, let's move on to that. So in the opener on Friday, Martin Maldonado grounded a ball back to I forget who it was at the time. It was one of the Cubs pitchers. Anyway, so he ended up bobbling the ball off the bat, and Martin Maldonado had not started running to first base because he's like, well, I just hit it back to the pitcher. Well, he kind of started trotting, but then he went to pick the ball back up picked it up, went to throw it, and it flew out of his hand again. So he ended up making it to first anyway. But in true Pedro Grafal fashion, he decided that it was time to dress down his catcher, his 37-year-old catcher, who's played in the major leagues for many years. It was time to make him look like an idiot and yell them for not running to first base. Your thoughts?
I oh my god. Like, so this is like regular season, right? Like, I do think these guys are professionals. I think they get paid enough money to like run hard to first. I really do. Like, I don't mind, like, that was Joe Madden's thing, right? Or it was Ozzie Guillen's thing too, like do the national anthem and run hard to first. Those are like the only rules, you know. And like I'm with that. Like that's fine. Like if a guy does this like in like the first series of the game and Pedro wants to like bench a guy, like I'm not gonna get on him for that. Like I think that's fine. But it's the first week of spring training, and I don't need my 37-year-old catcher flying down the line to first base. Like I just don't. Like I would appreciate him to like feign running, right? Like run down to first. Like run down there, Martin. Like that's fine. But like really, like we're doing this. Like it's and I got a lot of replies today. People thought I was like crazy for this take online. And like, look, like they're like, oh, they got to teach the young guys or whatever. Like I'm here to tell you, like, if Colson Montgomery and Brian Ramos like need to see Martin Maldonado run hard to first to like act like professionals, they're not the guys that we think they are. So like, yes, like Camp Pedro has already reached ridiculous levels.
I'm with you. I mean, we saw this with Yasmani Grandal. You know, knee injuries don't go well with catchers. Hamstring injuries don't go well with catchers. Lower back injuries don't go well with catchers. 37-year-old catcher, while he does look like he's in pretty decent shape, um, and as it was a comebacker to the mound, ultimately does that single matter in the grand scheme of the 2024 season? No, it does not. And like you said, everybody else was probably like, hey, you probably should have, at least like kind of took off out of the box right there. And he'd probably tell you the same thing, that he should have like kind of at least made an attempt to get out of the box and not just stand there, which he did. But yeah, ultimately it's the first preseason game. Who cares?
It's a fake game. Like, what are we doing? Like, and like, look, I get it. Like, the culture thing is like important to them, and like last year was a train. Like, I get the whole thing. Like that, but it's just like I don't know. Like, I'm big on like winning the war, like instead of the battle, right? Like, what do you think? Like, the primary reason for Martin Maldonado even being here is like I have
Certainly not hitting.
right. And like I kind of feel like if Martin Maldonado and Max Stassi are able to have some level of impact on your young pitchers, right? To the point where like you can figure out what you have. Like I think that's enough. Like I think that's worth the 4 million, right? Like if Nick Nastrini and Jake Eater and Eric Fetty, like if they learn enough from Martin Maldonado that they have like decent first seasons in the big leagues, I think that's important. He can't do that if he blows his hammy running to first in spring trading. He just can't. So like I'd much rather just ensure that these guys are healthy and fine. I mean, we saw did you see the other day when they were doing the sliding drills on the backfields and it showed like how is Eloy not dead from that?
And I don't know. You would think that some sort of engineering firm would have figured out a better way to engineer that, so you don't have to put a bag back in place after they slide. That whole thing just hurt my brain watching it.
Well, I thought it's like I just thought that like you would see like the camera pan and Eloy's like foot is like stuck in the fence somehow, you know? Like it's just because it's just like the way it's gonna work.
Or they just pan the camera over and there's already a tombstone there.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, yeah,
I
awful.
feel like it's just like what are we like? Camp Pedro is alive and well. So
Yep. As you said, Jim Boylan kind of reminds me of the Tressman growing the football thing as well. It's just all sorts of
yeah.
stupid things just fly out of
When
his
Jim,
mouth,
what
and I'm
did
kind of over it.
Jim Boylan said the Field of Dreams line right? Like in a post game, like if you build it, they will come. Like and everybody
Yeah.
was like, "What the hell are you talking about?"
Yeah. I mean, and I'll just take a quick turn here, since we're talking about the if you build it, they will come. Um, So the recent comments by Jerry, how do you feel about those to you is just this whole thing nonsense? Because that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's never spent money. He's not gonna spend money. Now, I do think like in some world like where like somebody else that wants to spend money owns the team, like is that more likely at a new location with like a ballpark village where you own all the stuff around the stadium? Sure. Like, yeah, there's truth to that, right? Like, they don't think that they can build what needs to be built like now where they currently are. Now, is some of that on them? Yeah, a lot of it's on them. Like they probably could have built that, right? And they can't now, right? So, like, do you want to own hotels and own restaurants and bars? Like, like if you've ever been to Cincinnati or St. Louis or Atlanta, they all have these ballpark villages and they own all of it. So, like, if that's what he's getting at, okay, sure. But like, they can win in their current park. They don't spend enough money on players. So yeah, full of crap.
This is exactly what I'm coming to is that he says that they can't compete in their current park. So then he asked for 1.1 million from that or 1.1 billion from the hotel tax, and then he says, "Oh well, there'll also be 900 million that'll be needed for the infrastructure improvements. The red line stop and all that stuff. Oh, and by the way, then it's also roughly going to be about 2 billion to build up the area right around it. So I mean." Realistically, you're looking at $4 billion that he's asking to be spent just so he can have his team over there because they can't compete in their current ballpark, completely and totally ignoring the elephant in the room, which is that the problem is in the owner's suite and that he doesn't spend any money on the team or doesn't put people in the right position to make decisions that are actually going to better his ball club, which is ultimately what I think is the problem is. Just
Yeah,
my
but
2 cents.
yeah, but didn't you hear that they're going to create a brand new Chicago riverfront neighborhood?
Great.
Yeah, I mean that's gonna pay for everything. And look, like I do think he's gonna get this, and we don't have to get into it. Like we can let Nick and Danny do this, and like
Yeah, yeah,
rile
of
rile
course.
up
Yeah.
people. Like that's fine. I just like there are just a few things that Jerry Reinsdorf is good at, and this is one of them. And like, look, he should take all the arrows. Like I've been complaining about that guy for like I tweeted this week. Like I feel like you turn on radio shows or whatever, and it's like it just dawned on people that Jerry Reinsdorf is like not great. Like we've known this for 30 years, guys. Like
Yeah.
this is like the way he runs his like I can't believe Jerry Reinsdorf would do this. Like what? Like what, what where have you like what are you talking about? Now, like yeah, I wish like I hope that like there's a new ballpark that I can take my kids to like in 6 years, like so like yeah, like I'm a
Yeah.
little bit conflicted. Like I am. Like it'll be
Hmm.
awesome. But yeah, that guy sucks. That's not a surprise at all.
Yeah. Just the whole thing just is. It's aggravating on so many levels. Yeah, yes, I would like a new stadium, because I look around and I see everybody else's brand new shiny things, and I think yeah, that would be great for the White Sox. And ultimately, I think that they made so many mistakes with the current building, but I don't think that that's going to solve any of the problems. The only thing that's going to solve the problem is having different ownership. So
Spend money on good players. I mean,
ultimately,
it's
I think that that's what it
yeah.
is, and allow people to do their jobs and don't get in their way.
Yeah, I think somebody said like so like like I love Moneyball and like you have to explain to people that like the point of that movie was like market inefficiencies like and I know Beef you're an accountant, right? So you would that's the point of that movie, right? Is finding those sorts of things. But like I joke that the Rangers market inefficiency was just signing all of the good expensive players and they they won a title doing it. So maybe try that for once. That would be
Shocking.
great.
Yeah,
Yes.
you put a good team on the field and people start coming to the park. I know it's like a weird thing, but that's how return on investment works, you know? So, inefficiencies. Yes.
Did I say efficiency? Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
stupid. Sorry.
whatever.
Yeah.
um so moving along here. Do you want to get into what you think is going to be some things that are going to be changing here on the 26 man slash 40 man with some of the performances that have been going on here in I mean, granted, we have a very small sample size of 3 spring training games, and it's obviously not full games for these players, but is there anything that you've seen that you think is going to change some things?
Well, I mean, I was told already by a prominent podcast host and buddy of mine that Jesse Chavez is already off the team.
Yeah,
So
he's toast.
yeah,
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 I
he's
mean,
done. Like one of our brethren already. He's done. I don't think he's done. Like I think that guy's probably on the team. So I guess like the easiest way to do this would be like out of all these like NRIs, like I guess who are the few that you think are the most likely to make this team, because they are going to have to use roster spots on a few guys. Like if they do that.
well, I mean, we've talked about the Gavin Sheets issue here. Um And I kind of think, you saw that play the other day from Mike Moustakis at first base. Um, Ultimately, as we've talked about, Mike Moustakis is probably a better option than Gavin Sheets. Now, is he super athletic? Is he going to allow you to put him in the outfield? No, but he's probably going to be better offensively than Gavin Sheets will be. Um, I mean, there's that. Um, as far as the other stuff, it's all like bullpen stuff. It's stuff that I ultimately don't think is going to be super important. But with a bunch of these guys that they signed, you might end up having them in Charlotte anyway, so they might be just a call away
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, so I think it's Moustakis for sure, and then a couple of relievers. And then the big question is like whether it's Danny Mendick or one of your in-house guys, I think, because we talked a little bit about Lenny and Sosa. He's been at third a little bit. Like Jose Rodriguez is on the 40 man. Braden Shoemake is on the 40 man. I know who you and I think is the most expendable. I don't know that they necessarily agree. So I feel like if you add Mendick, like one of those guys has to go. Like you can't. I know Sleepy said that he wants more infielder. You cannot have this many infielders on the 40 man. Like if you're not gonna, so I feel like somebody gets the boot if Danny Mendick's on the team. Now it would be great if Lenny and Sosa just was good and made the team, and then Mendick can go to Charlotte and you don't have to do anything. But for you to create spots for Danny Mendick, for Mike Moustakis, for Jesse Chavez, and for even like one other reliever. I mean, you need 4 spots. They have some 60 man IL space, I think, here. Like Davis Martin can go to the 60. My guess
Yep.
is Shane Drohan goes to the 60. And then who knows, right? Peyton Burdick like doesn't really seem long for this roster. Oh, and then Pilar. Pilar's on a minor league deal, so he's on the team too. So it is a lot of guys. Like I
Yeah.
think it's at least
Yep.
4 guys they're gonna have to add, depending on what they do in the bullpen.
Speaking of Peyton Burdick, what are your thoughts on that pickup? Like, I kind of don't understand it. Just seeing what the White Sox already have, it kind of seems like they're picking up somebody that's a little bit redundant, although he is a fairly decent center fielder. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I just like guys that can't get on base in the minors, like don't get on base in the big leagues. So he does have power, like and that's it. But he's like a 290 OBP guy with power. Um, could he impress you enough to make the team over Kevin Pillar? Okay,
Oh, well,
because he's a
that's
right.
not.
Like, so here's the thing: like he is right-handed, and like all of their potentially bad outfielders are left-handed.
That is true.
So
Yeah.
yes, he's right-handed. Um, I don't know when he was first, because he was acquired by Baltimore in February from the Marlins. I don't know
Yeah.
if that was prior to like the time where you're able to put guys on the 60 man, because the White Sox very clearly didn't claim him the first time that he was put on waivers,
Yeah. The Orioles
because
got him.
yeah,
Yeah.
because he got all the way to Baltimore. So they didn't like him enough to get rid of a guy for him then. But this time it's easy because you can just throw a guy on the 60-day IL to make his spot. So who knows? Like my guess is he's back in DFA limbo again, and he's like they try to get him to Charlotte,
That's my
as
guess. Yeah.
an off the roster. Um, But guys like him usually bounce around to like 5 teams. I think there's like a very low likelihood that he's much of anything. But it's big power. I'm guessing they liked him at Wright State, and it's just like a flyer to see what he looks like in camp. But I mean, and look, roster churn's not bad. Like, yeah, you
No.
you want to like churn the bottom of the roster as much as possible. I just don't think he's particularly good.
Well, I mean, and here's also the thing is that we talk about roster churn. They're not getting rid of anybody. They just keep on grabbing guys. Everybody that goes on the waiver list. Yep, we'll take some of that. We'll take some of that. And they just keep bringing everybody in, trying to stuff everything in there. And it's
Yeah,
like, how many of these guys can you get? And for those people that don't know much about Burdick, he is a smaller stature center fielder. He's a fairly decent fielder. He's not fast. He does have a lot of power, and the power definitely buoys his OPS. The power and his ability to take walks. But kind of along the same lines of Deloach is that he's a guy who walks a lot, but he also strikes out a ton. So I mean, essentially, they're just kind of opposing versions of the same player, more or less. So, um,
yeah, very similar. And just like before we go here, like looking back at the like the 40 man, the potential 60 man spot. So obviously like Shane Drohan we saw this week. Eh, like I don't think any shoulder surgery is minor, but it
yeah,
seems
just a cleanup.
it seems minor for a shoulder surgery. It's like a nerve thing. And he's gonna start like a throwing program after spring training. So look, he's probably going on the 60-day. As far as the Rule 5, like the rules, he has to spend 90 days active, but it doesn't have to be right away. It's just 90 total days. Um, Otherwise, he's basically like in the same spot that he's in now. So they would have to keep him on the 40 man or on the 40 man, but he can't be sent down. So basically, I think that 90 days can even go into next year essentially. But if he has options, you can't send him down until he spends like 90 days active with you essentially. Like if he's like
Right.
injured. So they're going to stash him, and who knows? Like maybe he pitches for the Sox in the second half, but that's a guy that I thought they were going to be forced to roster that now they don't really have to.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of, we saw it last year with dude from San Francisco who's Avila,
Mm-hmm.
who I thought that they should keep instead of Ruiz, but they kept Ruiz, and he went back to San Fran. Didn't make the major league club over there either, but you know that's usually what ends up happening with a lot of the Rule 5 guys. I would have preferred to keep Avila over even Drohan at this point, regardless of the shoulder surgery or not. I actually thought he was fairly useful. Um, and had Brian Bannister been here, maybe he might have been kept. I don't know. We'll see. But anything else you got for this week, James?
No, not really. And I think it's just a little bit different just because, like, they thought that they were going to win last year, right? So it's tougher to, like, keep a guy. I thought he was, like, anytime you make a Rule 5 pick like that, I just, like, assume that they're planning on the guy making the team because it's really hard to not. But when you're as bad as the White Sox are, like, I just assumed Drohan was going to be, like, a lefty out of the pen. It actually kind of helps them that they don't have to carry him.
Yeah, that's actually the exact same thing I thought. I was like, at
Mhm.
least uh, smash the like button,
Yeah.
please. As as I said the same thing. When he got injured, I was like, well, at least they don't have to put him on the 26 man now,
Yeah.
and they
Right.
can put him on the IL, and they can keep him around, and then they can end up keeping him. Obviously they thought it was worth taking in the Rule 5, so maybe
Hmm.
they get lucky enough that this team, by the time he's back to being ready to play, this team's already trading people off if
Right.
if they got enough good performances out there.
For sure. And now you can keep like Corey Knievel if you want to. So, or, Dominic Leone or one of these, whoever, like all these made up guys that they have in their bullpen, Brian Shaw, lock for the team. Like,
Yeah, which he already did his thing today, lead off walk,
yeah.
and of course that ended up scoring
Yeah.
later. I know that Beefloaf's a gigantic fan of Brian Shaw,
Well,
um, but
and look,
yeah,
he might make it. He signed with the right team out of, for spring training. That's for sure. So,
yeah, yeah, all these guys did. If you're
yeah.
looking to get some major league time, this is like the perfect team to sign with. I mean, Tony Snell, if he played baseball, he could have come here and gotten his health care.
His 10th year.
Yeah, he could
Yeah.
have come and got it here. It would have been absolutely no problem.
I'm actually surprised he's not pitching out of the bullpen, Like Jerry, that's one, we hammered Jerry Reinsdorf. He does take care of, like, Randy Brown's got a front office
So
job, and
how
Pete
did they not
Myers is on
sign
the
Snell?
bench, and I don't know.
That I thought for
Yeah.
sure they were going to sign him, even if they didn't roster him. Jerry would sign him and be like, "You're not going to play for the Bulls, but I got some work for you. We'll take you over to 35th and Shields.
Yeah.
You can come out of the bullpen. We'll get you your service time. All good."
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, who knows? So how long?
yeah.
How long are you expecting the big prospects in big league camp?
I mean, I will say they have been getting guys in and out of the games here pretty well in the first three games. So I don't think that they're going to get rid of them as quickly as I thought, just because they're cycling guys in and out, super quick. But yeah, I'd say probably like another week maybe, and then get them out.
And then it's lots of Mike Moustakas. Yes.
And Mike Moustakas.
We went out and
Yeah.
signed some guys that maybe wouldn't have a shot anywhere else. Yeah, that's true. Chris Getz said that.
Hooray!
He likes this team better than last year's team.
Got things to dream on. You good, James?
I'm all good.
All right. We are tapped out. FutureSox.net. You can find this podcast and all of our written content. You can find all sorts of good stuff over there about the roster crunches and all that good stuff. James mock draft, which came out last week, I believe, or a week and a half ago. So you can find that over there.
And that's already really dated, by the way, after college baseball started. So,
and after
what, Connor Griffin,
after Connor Griffin
torching Mississippi high school baseball,
went crazy.
He's gonna have like 85 steals in a high school baseball season,
and probably 65 home runs. He had like 3 home runs in like 2 games. YouTube, you can find this stream / podcast. You can also find this podcast anywhere that you find your podcast. You can find it on audio only form at YouTube, which we would encourage. At FutureSox, if you feel like supporting this content, you can stop by and support us with Patreon. My name is Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. That's James Fox at James Fox 917. We appreciate your guys' time. Thank you so much for stopping by this week, and we will catch up with you guys next week. Thank you so much. Have a great night.